So good evening, everyone. Once more, Mazezoke is joining you for the second time this evening. I am still Mazezoke, and this is still Njenje Media TV. Today being Wednesday, the 22nd of September, 2021. I will be having, like I said before, a very erudite professor to join me this evening, and we will be having a conversation centered around self-determination and the boycott of the 2023 presidential election. To join me have this conversation this evening is no other person than a man many of you on this platform know very well, Professor Femi Olufunmilade, who is the Director, Center for Contemporary Studies, Security Affairs, Ibunedion University, Okada. Now, this is a man who has done so much research in terms of security, and he's a professor of political science. I have the privilege to welcome Professor Femi Olufunmilade. Welcome to Njenje
Thank
Media.
you, Marcy. Thank you, Marcy, for bringing me on this program.
Thank you very much, Prof, for joining me. Now, we would start with, obviously, your background is in politics. You are
sure.
Professor of politics.
Sure.
Okay. Now, Prof, what do we need to, let me start, because this is a one-on-one conversation. So let me start by asking the question that would lay the groundwork for this evening conversation, assuming I do not know what self-determination is. I have had this conversation somewhat with Professor Banji Akintoye, where I did ask him, does self-determination equal breaking away from an existing entity, or what does it actually entail? Now, from the academic point of view, or from the realpolitik, which you are also very much involved in, I want to know, Professor, how do those who are on the street, who do not, have the privilege to have read as wide as you have, how and what should we understand by self-determination?
Thank you, Marcy. The word self-determination itself is quite simple. That is a situation where you determine things for yourself. You decide how you want to be governed. You decide the kind of policies that you want to be introduced and implemented. When you are talking about a group of people, like a nation within a multinational state like Nigeria, you have the Yoruba nation, you have the Igbo nation, you have the TV nation, you have the Hausa Fulani nation, each of which had existed and were self-governing before the British, who colonized this place called Nigeria, conquered them and took power. They were self-governing, they had their independent political structures, they had their culture, they had their economy, and what have you. But after they were conquered and the agitation for independence followed, starting from the south, the British left many of them as semi-colonies, in the sense that they handed over power to a section of the country that never really conquered, for example, the Middle Belters or the Southerners. The Hausa Fulani ruling oligarchy were the beneficiaries of were the successors to the military, to the British. And over the years, through a combination of lopsidedness, of electoral constituencies in civilian dispensation or democratic dispensation, and military intervention in which northern military officers were preponderant, the measure of power that or self-determination that were left with the various nationalities in Nigeria were gradually accumulated at the center. And of course, the northern power elites, the Hausa Fulani clique, happened to be the ones that became the biggest beneficiaries of that power. And that is the basis for the agitations we have and the discontent across the landscape of Nigeria today, particularly in the South and in the Middle Belt. And so if you want to now define self-determination, it's simply a situation where a nationality is asking to be given that power to decide how its life and its environment and its resources and everything that pertains to it is administered and governed. They don't want a situation where Abuja, where those who probably don't know anything about their culture, about their aspiration, about their worldview, are lording things over them, where those who did not suffer the environmental degradation they suffer as a result of oil exploration are the ones benefiting more from the oil that is polluting their environment. So as you move around the country, you see various colorations of self-determination. To the Niger Delta man, it will also include having substantial control over his oil resources so that he will be able to sanction oil companies that are spilling oil. Unlike the Nigerian state that is managed from Abuja, over the years, the Niger Delta environment was being destroyed, but the Nigerian state, because the Niger Delta people are not in charge, never really called the international oil companies to order. The same oil companies that will not dare do what they do here in the UK, where there is also oil, not sea oil, or in United States, where there is also oil in Alaska, in Texas, they come here and they spill oil, destroy the environment. So for the Niger Delta people, self-determination will mean let's have control over our oil and be able to get enough resources for remediation of the damages to the environment on account of oil pollution, oil spillages. To the Yoruba person, he looks at his not too long history of the self-governing era called era of limited self-government when Awolowo was premier, when there was no oil, and they recorded their fastest rate of growth and development in their history, relying basically on resources from within their region, while they were also giving not less than 20% to run the affairs of the federal government. And it was even on record that the Western region government used to give grants to the federal government of Nigeria. That was when they introduced so many wonderful things that make them pace setters, not just in Nigeria, but in the whole of Africa. They had the first free education program ever run on this continent. They were the first to introduce minimum wage and ended casualization of workers. There was nothing like casual workers under Chief Awolowo. You are either permanently employed or you are not given a job at all. The first TV station in Africa, and Lagos, that is the bedrock of our industrialization today. It may interest you that it was Awolowo, as part of his efforts to assert that Lagos, substantial part of Lagos was part of the Western region. He established Ikeja Industrial Estate, Ilupeju Industrial Estate, Oregu Industrial Estate, and so many other industries, Interland, Oluwa Glass, Nigeria Wire and Cable in Ibadan here, Nigeria Romania Wood Company, and so on. Even the cattle that you are talking about. When I was growing up, anytime there was a wedding in our family or there was a funeral and we needed cow, my father used to go to Fashola Cattle Ranch. Who established Fashola? It was Chief Awolowo. And there was another one at Akunu, and so on and so forth. So when they look at that past, they don't think that they needed anybody's oil to steer themselves back on the path of growth and development and greatness. But they want a situation where they can control their own affairs, where they can create their own development plan and, decide what they want within their space. But a situation where somebody wants to extract the Mabu in Igbeti or he wants to explore the second largest deposit of bitumen in the world in Agbabu, in Ondo State, he has to go to Abuja and go and meet somebody who may be from Sokoto, who may be from somewhere else, to get the necessary documentation done and go through a whole range of bureaucracy spanning more than a year. They don't want that kind of situation again. They want a situation where whatever is on their soil, they have full authority over it. They want a situation where if the rest of Nigeria do not want them to have that level of autonomy, they would like to go on their own separate ways and become self-governing as an independent sovereign nation. So that is the other dimension of self-determination. Either you allow us to have substantial measure of autonomy, something akin to what Awolowo enjoyed as a premier and enabled him to do the much he did for us. So then, Prof, let us get out of this federation, so-called, and let us be independent.
So, Prof, if I understand, or if listening to you now, what you're saying now, would I consider the time of 1960 to 1967? Would it be fair to say that, 1960 to 1967? Yes. Now, should we consider that time, the time frame, to be that various component units within the Nigerian Federation, that they were self-determined at that point?
Before I answer your question, let me just put off my computer. It's also on relaying this broadcast. Just a second.
So, I obviously, bear with us. The Prof is going to come back and attempt to answer my question. Okay, Prof, you're back now. Did you understood my question, right?
You are asking whether the period between 1960 and 1967 can be regarded as a self-governing period.
Yes.
Well, you know that the first military coup took place January 15, 1966. So I want to assume you are talking about 1960
yes. 1960, well, 1966, so
1966, that right. January 1966. Well, that period was a period that was also akin to the time Awolowo, Zik, and Ahmadu Bello simultaneously were premiers of their respective regions. So the constitution on which that period was managed at governmental level was what we call the 1960 Independence Constitution, which, following an amendment in 1963, whereby the then Governor General, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, got a new title as president, and it became a Republican constitution. That era was, to a great extent, okay to be tagged as an era of relative self-determination, because the regions were powerful, and a lot of the items in the 1999 Constitution that are now in the exclusive list, that is within the purview of the federal government alone, were, as at that time, in the residual list. That is, only the regions will exercise power on a lot of them. And just some few items were in the concurrent list. So it's a matter of degree. Compared to now, you can say that era was an era of relative self-determination. TV, so many things, agriculture, health, a lot of things were within the purview of the regional government, substantially. Even police, they had regional police. There are even some sort of police at the local government level, especially in the northern part of the country. But today is no longer so. Because today, what constitute the federating units, that is the state governments now, or the states, the chief executives of the states, the governors, are only called chief security officer on paper. They are theoretical chief security officers, but in practice, they are not. The inspector general, the commissioner of police in each of the states is accountable to the inspector general of police in Abuja, who in turn is accountable to the president of the country. If the a state governor gives an order and the inspector general of police gives an order, of course, the state commissioner of police is bound, duty bound, to obey the order of the inspector general of police, who appointed him to serve as commissioner of police in that state in the first instance. And that is why we have seen situations in this country where a state commissioner of police is used to undermine the job of a state governor. Remember, under President Obasanjo, Governor Chris Ngige's police orderlies were withdrawn by the commissioner of police in that state. And then hoodlums took over the state, and under the supervision of hoodlums and the protective cover of hoodlums, we saw it live on TV. I watched it on NTA, where hoodlums were destroying public property. And Governor Ngige, for a long time, had to resort to self-help for his own security. He had to gather some boys to protect him. We have seen situations where, under President Goodluck Jonathan, Governor Rotimi Amechi of Rivers saw hell in the hands of the police commissioner in his state, who then was taking orders from Abuja to undermine the governor, hounding him, blocking route, arresting his allies, and so on and so forth. So that tells you that now everything is centralized. If a governor is not enabled to perform the most basic function of governance, which is to protect life and property, to provide security, if he cannot even secure himself, then it tells you that all is not well at all. Imagine when the southern states said they were going to enact law banning open grazing. We had that the commissioners of police had been directed from Abuja not to enforce the law. So that is the kind of aberration that is ongoing.
Okay, now obviously from what you've explained, there is you mentioned in your answer, regarding the exclusive list. Would then there be fair to say that if the exclusive list is unbundled, that the regions, quasi the states, as it were today, will be having enough to say that they are self-determining their future?
My brother, let me tell you, things have gone beyond that now. As part of self-determination, the principle of self-determination, we cannot sit down here and begin to speak for the federating units of Nigeria what self-determination will mean for them now. They themselves, like I said earlier, there are different colorations of what self-determination entails. But generally and in principle, it entails a high degree of autonomy for self-governance in areas that matter, such that the things that are left for a central government to undo are things that those federating units themselves agree are in their own best interest to be handled jointly, like defense, for instance, foreign affairs, maybe common currency. So that is it. You cannot decide for anybody now. And that is why somebody like me has been clamoring for the need. I've even done videos advising President Buhari that, see, it's better to judge than to war. Who is running away from a situation where we are saying, let us all sit down together? The man, the Ijaw man, the TV man, the Kanuri man, the Fulani man, the Hausa man, Yoruba man, Igbo man, the Benin man, the Urobo man. Let's sit down and agree on how we want to federate or confederate. And if need be, to say, if we are going to part, let's part peacefully on these terms. So self-determination cannot necessarily be narrowed down now to mean the moment you devolve some powers from the exclusive list to the residual list, even though that is the popular thing people say.
Okay. So
it will entail allowing the people concerned themselves to now tell us what do they want, because they are the best. What will make you happy if you are to be part of Nigeria? What do you want? So that is what is needed.
Okay.
Let people say for themselves what they want.
Let me anchor my next question on what you just said now. What the people want. Obviously, you have been part of the Odua Nation campaign, and obviously also, in a bid to create that self-determination push. If I then ask you point blank, Prof, I would say, what does the Odua Nation want? Can you give us the definition of their self-determination? Because I remember when I speak to Professor Akintoye, he says, we want Odua Nation. And I asked him, Prof, are you talking of Odua Nation within the context of Nigeria, or are you talking of Odua Nation that would break away from Nigeria to be an independent nation, a nation under ECOWAS and the larger Africa and the world?
And what did he say?
Well, it's a little bit neither here nor there. On one point, he said, well, if need be that is going to lead to breakaway, then so be it.
Okay. In the month of September 2019, I was invited to Lagos by my leader, Professor Banji Akintoye, an erudite professor emeritus of African history, a Second Republic senator, a leading member of the Action Group, a man who had seen it all. He saw Nigeria before it vetted as an independent nation, and he also participated actively in the politics that led to independence and in the immediate post-independent era. And in the Second Republic, he was elected a senator. So he's a man who is highly knowledgeable about what you may call the history of Nigeria, and more than the history of Nigeria, where the various nationalities that constitute Nigeria, where they are coming from. He knows about the history of the Hausa people, the Igbo people. He knows about their cosmology. He knows about their culture. And today, having reviewed all the troubles of this country and the stagnation in which we have found ourselves, rather than making progress, we are regressing. And it's now over 86 years. He said he owes it a duty to posterity to help steer the people of this country in a direction that would give us respite. And so on the 29th, on a day in September 2019, he invited me to Lagos. We met at the office of Professor Anthony Killer. There were other eminent people there, people like Chief, the former managing director of Daily Times, who was also the DG of our transition from Lagos to Abuja as Federal Capital Territory. Chief Tola Adeni. There was Professor Adeni was there. Professor Okundawale was there. Dr. Aki Fakponda. And a host of others. Otumba, the Joshibogun, the Media Mogul. We deliberated on the situation in the country, and we came to the resolution that we needed to start a movement towards the actualization of a Yoruba nation. And to validate the correctness of our stance is the way that proposition has resonated with Yorubas, both home and abroad. I've not seen anything since I was born that have ignited the enthusiasm of Yoruba people more than this proposition of a Yoruba nation. We had people of Yoruba ancestry who traveled all the way from Cuba, Venezuela, Mexico, USA, Spain to identify with us. And we have Nigerians of Yoruba ancestry in the diaspora, those who went there to study, those who went there to work, forming themselves into Yoruba Nation mobilization groups. They are there in London, they are there in New York, they are there everywhere. And there is nobody in Yoruba land that you will talk to that will tell you he doesn't know about this movement. And they passionately believe that, well, it may take time, but the journey of 1,000 years normally begins with a step. So what type of self-determination do Yoruba people want? I want to draw your attention to the issue of restructuring. The campaign for restructuring, which can be broken down to mean a degree of self-determination, a degree of autonomy, was birthed in Yoruba land. The pundits of that idea were Yoruba originally. But since the same affliction we are suffering in Nigeria is the same affliction the Igbo man is suffering, the same affliction the Ijaw man is suffering, the same affliction the TV man is suffering, you discover today that those who are at the forefront of the clamor for restructuring span the entire nationalities in the southern part of the country and a lot of the nationalities in the middle belt. And it was because the powers that be, the conservative forces, in whose hands the power of the federation lies now, did not want to hear anything restructuring. That is, any form of enhancement of autonomy or expansion of room for self-determination within one Nigeria. That was what pushed people to that extreme, that if you want Nigeria that is not working to continue, Nigeria that is a shame, Nigeria that is not progressing, that is regressing in all indices of human growth and progress, then we are ready to say bye-bye to you. And that is when this other option came up, which is Oduduwa Republic. It's not about just a Yoruba nation within the Nigerian Federation, an independent nation that has its own army, its own central bank, its own Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
So, Prof,
that is one
Prof,
definition of it.
So, may I interject here? So, there is a difference between Yoruba nation and Odua Republic.
Yes. Even though they are used interchangeably. But I am telling you authoritatively that
Can you make that distinction for the viewers, please?
Okay. You can have, even as we are talking, we have a Yoruba nation in Nigeria. What do you call a nation? A group of people who share who lay claim to common ancestry, common history, common culture, language, worldview, and who also, in many cases, live under a common governmental authority. In Nigeria today, I think the only thing that is lacking in describing the Yoruba areas of this country as a nation is that they are not under a common separate governmental authority. The authority under which they exist is the federal government of Nigeria. But in terms of every other characteristics of a nation, they are present. We know ourselves. We have our language. We have our culture. We have our territory. We are not a diffused race. We have a particular territory that if we say we want to be on our own, we don't want to do anything with Nigeria, the natural boundary is there, where Yoruba land ends. You have to go to parts of Kogi State, the Kaba area. You have to go to parts of Kwara State, the entire 6 southwest states, parts of Edo, even up to Delta. The security ethnic group of the Yoruba race. So we have a Yoruba nation within the Nigerian Federation. There is no doubt about that.
So it will be fair to say,
we do not have an Odudua Republic, because that will signify the fact that we are independent of any other superintending authority.
Okay.
But so we have a Yoruba nation.
It will be fair to say that as it is today, what the Yoruba people of Nigeria want is a Yoruba nation and not a Yoruba Republic. Am I correct in making that assumption?
Sir, what we want is a Yoruba nation that its characteristics also include being under one governmental authority, a regional authority.
Okay.
And that was what we were pushing under the rubric of restructuring, which the present regime doesn't want to hear, even though they use it to campaign in Yoruba land, knowing that that is what we wanted. And after they won election, it's now being jettisoned. That our people find a lot more annoying. But since that was not granted, our people are then thinking of Odudua Republic. That is the distinction.
Now,
so what we want is a situation where if we are to remain within Nigeria, we want to have like when Awolowo was premier, we want a common governmental authority to which power will be substantially devolved from Abuja, so that we can pool resources together. There are too many governmental bureaucracies in the various states, state houses of assembly, state secretariat, this and that, local government. We want to be able to streamline things among ourselves and be able to put more resources into development. That is our aspiration.
Okay.
And we can only achieve all this when you consider to us
Okay, so in order to not to create confusion in the minds of those watching us currently, once more, this is Njenje Media TV. I am still Mazezoke, and I do have here Professor Femi Olufunmilade here with me, discussing self-determination and the boycott of 2023 presidential election. Now, before, if you're just joining us, Prof just made a clarification as to what Yoruba Nation and the Odua Republic is. So, in my understanding, again, in my summary here, Odua Nation means a Yoruba entity that would exist within the context of today's Nigeria. But again, being, pushing to have more regional autonomy, that being able to control things within, your space. Now, whereas Odua Republic means an independent nation outside today's Nigeria. I hope that
You are
summary.
correct.
Okay.
You are correct. Yoruba nation, of course, will continue to exist even within the Odudua Republic, because the Yoruba nation entails Yorubas in diaspora. So we may have the Odudua Republic that is territorially within Africa, but the Yoruba nation will include Yorubas in Togo, in Benin Republic, in Ghana, in UK.
Prof, those are semantics. If you have Nigeria as a republic, Nigerians live everywhere. So if you have Yoruba Republic, of course, Yorubas are in Brazil, in Togo, in Benin, in Brazil, everywhere. So that's given. But
we cannot describe them as part of the Yoruba Republic if they are domiciled, they are under or existing under another authority there. But we can include them as part of Yoruba nation. They will be part of Yoruba nation in diaspora, but they cannot be part of Yoruba Republic.
Nothing says you cannot issue them passport. They become part of your nation.
That is if we have such law.
Okay. Anyway, let's not get into deep into that. But Prof, let me come back to something here. You've made this clarification. Now, which of these do you think, because now let's say we've done a lot of theorization here. Let's come down to real politics. Let's come down to reality.
Okay.
Which of these do you think, from your experience, from your engagement, which of these do you think is realistic, as it is today? Prof, are you there? Okay, I think Prof has got some technical issues. People, I think I'm loving this conversation. I'll bring Prof back again. Again, if you're joining us, I am still Mazezoke, and this is Njenje Media TV. This evening, I have in the studio Professor Femi Olufunmilade, and we are discussing self-determination and the boycott of 2023 presidential election. Professor is back in the studio now. Prof, you're back here.
I'm with you.
Okay, so I think we had a slight connection glitch there. So my last question, would you mind attempting
that? Come again, please.
Okay, I said, now you have laid down the difference between Yoruba Nation and Odua Republic. Then I ask, in the context of today's Nigeria, which of these do you think realistically, now let's come down to the real politics. You are an erudite professor of repute. Obviously, you're not only theorizing, you engage in practical politics. Now let's talk practical. Which do you think is possible?
Well, it depends. When you are conducting social research, we normally talk about dependent and independent variables. Let's say the course that the Yoruba would take in the context of the situation in Nigeria now would be dependent on other variables within the country. And an important variable is the present regime in power. Other variables are the other nationalities. Igbo, Hausa, Fulani, and the Niger Delta people, the Middle Belt people, their attitude towards the unfolding situation will also influence our own thinking and the position we are going to take. Because when you are engaged in this kind of agitation or struggle for self-determination, you must be dynamic, because as the variables around you are changing, you have to quickly do a review of the changing situation to align your tactics and strategy accordingly. So right now, the focus in Nigeria is 2023 presidential election, gubernatorial elections, senatorial, House of Rep, state House of Assembly. That is what the Nigerian state would want us to focus. That is what the political class will want us to focus, including Yorubas within the political class, because it will present the impression that there is orderliness, there is stability, and whatever grievances we have, after all, there will be an opportunity for us to express our feelings through the ballot box. So some of us are, interrogating this particular scenario. And we are coming up with some submissions. I, for one, I am beginning to think that it may not be the very best strategy to say we are leaving the political space and arena to these other actors who do not want us to have autonomy, who do not want us to enjoy self-determination, and think that by boycotting the election, we are spiting, we are delegitimizing whatever government they want to produce. If we are 100% united in Yoruba land, I would have said that is going to be feasible. But we have a situation where we have politicians amongst us, and we have some of our people that feed on politics, the leftovers, the hangers on of the big politicians, that this is their season. This is when they get crumbs from the master's table, and they have no other means of livelihood. In as much as they come out to vote, in as much as they go out there to paste posters and they rent crowd to come to their campaigns, the impression will be given that, yes, the politicking is active in Yoruba land. And if you don't go out to vote, you give a lot of room for them to just change figures, hook up figures, and you will see a lot of. So I am thinking that abandoning the space to them may not be the very best of strategy.
Okay, so now if I understand your thinking very well, it means that the quote unquote the Yoruba nation as it is today is, I wouldn't want to use the word confused, but is not too clear as to whether to totally abandon the 2023 elections, basically boycott, because in your words, if they do, you might have those hawks that you want to push away from governing you coming in to govern you through the back door. So, which is now invariably a dilemma. Do you boycott the elections and leave those, and leave the door open for them to come in? Or do you come in while you're still making your struggle and stop them from taking over? Is that basically what you're saying, Prof?
Well, what I'm saying is this. I'm a political scientist who specializes in strategic studies. And I teach in the Nigerian military colleges. My perspective must reflect my educational background. I am not being arrogant or trying to be proud. I can say that I can see and foresee better than many of our people, because I do practically nothing else than studying these things. So I am adopting a strategy in war whereby you actually take the battle to the enemy territory. The politicians will be too glad and happy if we abandon the space to them. It means they are going to have automatic victory. But I don't want them to have to enjoy that, because they do not buy our vision. They do not share our concerns. Therefore, taking the battle to their territory means we should look for those amongst us who are for self-determination and use this democratic leeway to advance the cause of self-determination. Let me quickly give you an illustration. We know that those who do not want self-determination are assumed to be largely in the far north of this country. They don't want the restructuring. They are the ones speaking against it. The president is from that part of the country. His party, those of us who put this self-determination restructuring in the manifesto of the APC are largely from the south, particularly the Yorubas within the party. And now, having gotten power, they jettison it. So what we are saying is those amongst us who did not challenge the North to say, look, this was our pact with our people, restructuring. And they now leave us, the common people, to be the one agitating. Such people should not be allowed to call the shots over our affairs. They should not be elected senators, House of Rep members, or governors again. Amongst ourselves, those two who stood in the gap, who are convinced people in terms of this self-determination aspiration, should be encouraged. We should search for them and let them be candidates. If they get elected, they will now use their elective offices to advance the cause of self-determination.
But Prof,
let me give you let me land.
If they are saying, Prof, here, if they are saying, we don't want election, we don't want to take part in this election. Now, I mean, let me play the devil's advocate here. You know, they don't want. But I do also understand, I mean, because again, you know, utopically, you know, thinking abstractly, you know, that concept of Yoruba nation boycotting election would only work if you have 100% compliance. But you and I know that it is impossible to have 100% compliance, meaning if 10 people probably comes out for election within the Yoruba nation, where let's say 90% compliance and 10% come out, you still have governor, house reps, local
certainly,
or anything. So the question is, how do you resolve this quagmire? If you have, by reading the comments already here online, I can see a lot of Yoruba people, Adetola Sheyi, Olatoye, Yinka, Penman. I can see a lot of them already saying, we are not interested in 2023. Now, because the Yoruba nation agitation has given them that belief that we are going to have a Yoruba nation. But how do you reconcile if you have the diehards that will drive and say, we don't want, and you have those that say, well, obviously that is democracy. If you don't want, you stay away. But those that go to pool, they will win. So how do you reconcile that? How
Yes.
do you get the
Yeah,
people to agree on something?
you see, uh, Yoruba land is a very rich. Yorubas they are quite rich in terms of contestation or allowing contestation of ideas. What I'm saying here, I'm not going to pursue it solo. If the overwhelming majority of those of us in the Yoruba Nation advocacy or Oduduwa Republic advocacy say no, we are going to boycott, trust that I will be part of those that will implement it to the letter. But I'm just talking now as a participant in this movement and as a scholar. I cannot allow a situation to come upon me before I start envisaging what the outcome will look like. Then I will not be a strategist or a scholar of strategic studies. I have tried to look ahead, and I see how uncomfortable our politicians are with us and how desperate they are to go ahead with these elections, and how they will be willing to use every power at their disposal, security agencies. Look at even the rally that we were trying to hold in Lagos. Some people were behind the effort to ensure that that rally did not hold. The attack on Igboho, who they talked was the ringleader of the rallies, to ensure that he would not be able to participate, which they achieved. And the deployment of security forces to ensure that the outing was brutalized. So these same people are still there, and they will do the same thing to ensure that election holds and that some people, their gang, are elected back into various offices. So what I'm saying is that we should also use our own number and the fact that this agitation for self-determination resonate with our people. I'm talking about using the political instrument as a tool of achieving self-determination. I'm not saying participating in this election should be an end in itself. And for the presidential election, I am thinking of a situation where the entire South and the Middle Belt will come together and vote along the same lines, the same senators, House of Rep members, House of Assembly members, governors who are for self-determination. And then that will give us enough numbers to change the Nigerian constitution, the two-thirds that we need, the constitutional requirement for constitutional amendment, whereby we can then amend the Nigerian constitution to something like that of the UK Confederacy. All the powers we don't want at the center, we bring it we devolve it to the regions or to the states. Whether Sokoto or Katsina is part of the voting will not mean anything, because the entire 17 states in the south, most of the states in the Middle Belt, and even some minorities in the northeast and northwest, if we are able to come to the same platform using this election, whereby for us to vote for you, you come out openly, you sign a pact, you make a vow. It's not going to be something that you just promise. And everybody will know this is what you are committed for. And there will be a roadmap that so, when you come into power, this is your pact with the people. If you don't do it, there will be revolt.
Prof,
that is the sort of thing I'm talking about.
Prof, hold on. You're talking about making a vow. You're talking about making a pact. In 2014, 2015, there was what we called my covenant with the Nigerian people. In the same year, there was what we called the 100 days of Buhari. There was what were called my 100 days in office. All these things, I mean, these were pacts. Before the merger happened, there were pacts that APC, to a point, produced the fantastic document that promised that the devolution of power, that power will be devolved, that this will happen, the structuring will happen, which, as you alluded here before,
what you are saying is betrayal in a nutshell, that people can get into power on
Prof,
the
I'm coming to that.
on the back of this self-determination campaign, and then
Prof, I'm coming to that.
backslide.
Prof, I'm coming to that. I'm happy that you used the word betrayal. Now, if those who did the same with good intention, because when I look at some names, I can see the good intention. You know, no matter how you like or hate Oyegum, okay, I'll so everyone, I think this argument is getting interesting. The comment section is busting. So people, please try as much as possible to stay tuned. Again, I say keep the conversations coming. Make it civil, people. I love it. I say thank you very much, everyone, for joining me. But please do me a favor. We have over 500 people watching across various platforms, and we only have on Facebook 11 likes, on YouTube almost. Come on, people. You know, just the basic thing, the basic we can do is to, like the stream. I beg you, please, just click on the like button. Click on the like button, please. Click on the like button. Like this stream, people. So let me wait. Just click the X button. Like it. Like the video. I love this conversation. Prof is coming back. I think he's basically attending to something now. So please like this stream. Like this stream. Okay. So we would quickly continue now. Prof will be back shortly. Okay, Prof is back. I'll be bringing Prof back in now. I'll let him obviously set. I think there are some technical issues here, but that will be resolved soon. So, Prof, I can see you. I know you can hear me. I will be bringing you back shortly so that this conversation, this fantastic conversation, must continue. So, having said that, everyone, once more, I thank you for joining us. I am still having this conversation with Professor Femi Olufunmilade, and we are discussing self-determination and the boycott of 2023 presidential elections. So, Prof, welcome back to this conversation. Now, before that minor interlude, I was basically trying to find out, I think, if I put it this way, I alluded to the fact that before now, in 2014-15, promises were made. I can understand where you're coming from, that rather than run away, where you create vacuum for cucumbers and carrots to take over the stage, those who are agitating today that Nigeria is not working, that they want to do to our nation, should get into the ring. Because they have the population, they should then elect themselves and drive that narrative. But again, I'm not, it will be ignorance to say, well, fine and good, that is theoretically right. But what if, as they say in my place, if a bee stings you, whenever you see the big flies, you begin to run. You think it's a bee. So if the people have been stung in 2014, 15, and 2019, now in 2023, people are thinking, oh, well, it's happened to us twice now. Is that going to be another reputation? So how do you convince the people? Again, I have read people here, also people say, well, those saying total boycott are being entirely emotional. Well, one could argue that they have it's an emotional thing. But if we detach our emotions and put on the thinking cap of strategists, the question is, as long as, or rather, put it this way, if we do not have 100% compliance, then boycott might actually be null and void. What's your take?
Well, that is what I'm saying. I have sat down and envisaged, I look at the future, that, okay, come 2023, we decide to campaign. I've even discussed this at least 2 times with Professor Banja Akintoye. And we have not been able to really reach any conclusion because he is also quite skeptical about what I'm trying to say. His own greatest worry is what you have just said about who are the people that you are actually going to say, go and contest and push this agenda using the pedestal of government. How reliable are they? How reliable? He gave me an illustration of those that are there right now. He said, whatever we may say, we still have representatives in the various structures of government. Are they representing us now well? If they are not representing us well, these ones that we say we want to put there this time around, what is the guarantee that they also will not turn coat? So that is Papa's way of looking at it. And I sympathize with him. And I was highly, I couldn't push too hard to argue otherwise, because human nature, there is betrayal in it. But I am just looking at a situation where we can put some safeguards in place. We can make the mode of nominating and electing such people to have certain constraints that will make betrayal almost suicidal for them. What those things will be is open for further interrogation. But I am just thinking that if we then say we are boycotted, they will call it low turnout at best. They will say, oh, there was poor turnout of voters. After all, if you go and look at previous elections in this country, we've never really had up to 50% turnout in most of these elections that we are talking about. So if you now have maybe just 30% turnout or 25% turnout, it will not be enough to discredit the election. They will just say there was voter apathy. That is what it will be called. It's not going to, in the face of the law, in the eyes of the law, those who are elected, even if in the whole of Oyo State is, let's say, 2,000 persons that came out to vote. So far, he has the spread that in the various, the 2,000 covers 2/3 of the states. And out of the 2,000, he is able to get like 1,500 or 1,002 more than the other candidates. The INEC commissioner will have no choice, or whoever is in charge of the election or the returning officers, than to give him the certificate of return as the elected governor. That is what will happen, except he doesn't, and if he doesn't even have the spread, the next thing to happen is that they will ask for a rerun. And if in the rerun, maybe you have extra, they can campaign more, they induce some people with cash and other, and you have another 1,000 more, 3,000. And somebody emerge clearly a winner, he will be sworn in.
Now,
Notwithstanding the fact that the voter population in that state is close to 1 million, it won't matter.
Yeah, I mean, Prof,
If that happens, now where I'm going is, if that then happens, the question I ask myself is, what material benefit does he add to the quest for Oduduwa Republic?
It actually destroys it. That actually destroys it.
Now we have said we are boycotted, and the election has been held, and new governors have been sworn in, new senators have been sworn in, and these are people whose minds are deeply poisoned against us, because they see us as people that did everything within our power to scuttle their emergence, and they now emerge. Common rally, we will find it difficult to hold. Nothing, they will deploy every state machinery against us. We will be framed up because they will see us as enemies. They will not be able to sit down and govern until they have dealt with us.
Okay,
so,
Prof, can we consider this? Is it possible to, maybe on a state level, in order not to have anarchy, we say local government election, House of Assembly election, because the issues that we have are not, the issues that lead to the agitations are not entirely on the state level or the local government level. The issues that lead to these agitations are at the upper level, which is at the federal level. Now, how does it sound if the people say, okay, we will elect our councillors, our local government chairmen, our governors, but we will boycott the presidential election to make a point? After all, if you don't get 4 out of the 6 geographical spread, you do not win. You cannot have a presidential, or rather, you can't win a presidential election. How does that sound?
The question I want to ask is that, at the end of the day, In Oyo State, for instance, we have a lot of Arewa communities. In Ibadan, we have Sabo, in Okeogun, we have a lot of them. What if they vote for their own person who is contesting? Or we are going to go to Sabo and say they must not contest. So far, some votes are also derived from this part. It will be on the basis of the total number of votes cast that the constitutional requirement will also be determined. So if all Yoruba people say they were not going to vote, and maybe all the Igbos in Oyo State come out to vote, all the Hausa Fulani, they come out to vote, the Urobos, the Jaws, they come out to vote. Of course, haven't we have a situation in Lagos where 4 House of Representatives members elected in was it not 2015, were Igbos? Or was it 2011? So we need to be very, very unemotional about this thing and face reality. We should try not to. Let me give you an illustration. I was groomed politically by late Chief Olegi of blessed memory. There was a time he said he adopted sit-don't-look approach politics. Sit-don't-look, you will assume that he was not going to involve himself in the shenanigans of the politics or transition of General Ibrahim Babangida at that time. He said this sit-don't-look thing around 1992 when Babangida was banning and unbanning politicians, and he said it's time to sit-don't-look. He wrote it as an article in the Guardian newspaper, and he wrote it in it. The title was in italics, sit-don't-look. Now, I want to tell you that even at that time, when he didn't join any of the party, whether SDP or NRC openly, I can tell you authoritatively that a number of the people that were contesting, they normally come to pay homage to him. He was influencing things in the background. He didn't totally abdicate responsibility because he was a political force to reckon with. They didn't just leave the space for Babangida to put in people that will undermine our interest. So he sit-don't-look, but his hands were working.
Now,
so what I want to say is that if we say we boycott, there will be elected governors, despite the fact that we boycott. There will be elected senators. A president will be produced despite our boycotting. A House of Rep members will be elected, and so on and so forth. The question I want to ask is that, what then material thing can we say, the fact that we say, those of us who are for self-determination boycotted this thing, what is the gain that we will have in that outcome? What tangible contribution will it make to the quest for self-determination? That is my concern. Because let me also tell you that it is not every Yoruba that believes in Oduduwa Republic, but it resonates with the majority. That I can tell you. I belong to so many platforms where I receive insults about self-determination, Oduduwa Republic, and from fellow Yorubas who don't believe in it, who are saying we are taking this thing too far. Yoruba nation cannot be viable. There are charlatans who talk like that. They are Yorubas. We are not going to kill them. They are expressing their views. So we should not operate as though 100% of our people, forget the politicians, even those who are not politicians, among them we have a lot of people that don't want to hear Oduduwa Republic. There are platforms where they've tried to remove me. They say I'm an extremist. And it's Yoruba people that did it, and I didn't care. So I'm saying that take the battle to the enemy's turf. Take the battle to the enemy's turf. We should have a plan B. We should look at this election as something that we can hijack. We should think of how we can hijack it to our own advantage. That is what I'm saying. But if at the end of the day, let me tell you, let me make something categorically clear. If the leadership of the Yoruba Nation movement decides finally that we are not going to participate I, Femi Olufunmilade, will not participate. I will not. We are just engaging ourselves in an intellectual discourse, looking at the scenarios unfolding and trying to arrive at the best stance to take. If we are not going to participate and others participate, what material gain accrues to the quest for self-determination for Yoruba nation or Oduduwa Republic by that non-participation? What are we going to get out of it?
In my view, it would actually destroy the struggle, because if it will be a winner take all, okay, and today we have those that ought to be representing us misrepresenting us, even when we have voted them. Now, imagine what they will now do if, when you boycott, and those who are quote unquote from the other side now wins. In that case, they will say, well, you didn't vote for me. You want Yoruba nation. You want this. You want the other one. Therefore, I think they could even be more wicked. But let me take this comment from Yinka. Yinka said, in this case, we set up a new party now, and we have one issue we campaign on: exit from the federation. I mean, that's what Nigel Farage did with UKIP in the United Kingdom. Again, and I said this, when as late Pa Anthony Enahoro moved a motion for Nigeria to become independent, he didn't do that from boycotting or from his bedroom. I believe he did that because he was in the parliament. Yes, it didn't happen then, but at least he set in motion. Now, do you think, if I don't know if it's something Park Akintoye, I don't know his views on that maybe convince people, go vote in the election, then elect those that will go to National Assembly, maybe within 30 days or 90 days, you must move a motion for Odua Nation. I don't know, something maybe radical. But I see your point, obviously, and I see the point you're making, that if you boycott in the way it is being called without 100% compliance, you're going to be leaving the space for those who obviously do not align with your thinking, and that will be dangerous for the struggle. I mean, that's what I take from, that's my understanding of what you're saying.
Yes. So but let me say this. The comment you just mentioned, that you said, Yinka said, I want to commend him for thinking that way. See, I want to give the listeners an illustration of what self-determination can be. United Kingdom today is a loose confederacy. It's not even a federation. It's a loose confederacy where the confederating units, each of them in their law, have a provision to conduct a referendum on whether to remain within the United Kingdom or to exit it. That is the sort of thing we can go and put in the Nigerian constitution, when we are able to team up and elect those who are persuaded of this advocacy for self-determination. We go and put it in the Nigerian constitution. And you know that with that, it will then be legal locally and internationally, before the international community. If we say, let us invoke this provision for referendum, we want to vote and see whether we to have Yoruba nation, and everybody, including those Yorubas who don't want it, they also exist too. They will also come and vote, and the majority will carry the day. So beyond that, you discover that each time they cast they do invoke referendum, whether in Ireland or Scotland, none of them has voted to exit. Do you know why? because the majority, the kind of autonomy they enjoy, they discover that they stand to benefit more by remaining a part of that loose union where nobody is cheating them of their resources or lording anything over them. They have 95% freedom to do whatever they want within their space. They have their own parliament, and their leader is called First Minister. First means prime. The parliament in England, House of Commons, has prime minister. In Scotland, their parliament, they have first minister. So they have a virtually 95% governmental, independent governmental authority. Scotland has its own central bank and prints its own currency. Scotland, and it's part of United Kingdom. They have their own currency. You live in UK, so you know this. They have their own national football team. The national football team that also goes to World Cup. They are dealt with in international sports, in international monetary transactions as an independent country, more or less. So
okay, Prof,
the only reason why they are loosely part of United Kingdom is to have a common market that they enjoy and common defense. The things that they have in common are the things controlled under what they call the Home Office. They are semi-independent nations. They are 95% independent. What if we make Nigerian constitution to be like that?
Yeah, but how are you going to make it? You say that's the thing. We
can't make it by running away from it. Let me tell you, it's predicated on. It's not only Yoruba people that are tired of the way Nigeria is configured today. Igbos are tired. That is why you have MASOB, Movement for the Actualization of Sovereign State of Biafra. That is why you have IPOB, Indigenous Peoples of Biafra, in Igbo land. You go to Niger Delta, that is why they've been crying resource control, resource control. That is why we had militancy in the Niger Delta. You go to the Middle Belt, all those Benue, Plateau, parts of Taraba, and all those places, Kogi, Kwara. Most of them today are not what they used to be. There are a lot of groups agitating there now that they are tired of the way this country is configured. My own thinking is that if we can mobilize all these forces that want that they want self-determination, they want to control their own resources, they want to have control over their own territory. Nobody will be threatening them that they want to acquire their riverside, or they want to acquire their land for Ruga and other. If all these people can team up, they are sufficiently mobilized, and we all vote in the same direction. Those who have been loading it upon us in Nigeria since independence will be swept out because they are in the minority. The only reason why they keep on perpetuating themselves in power is that the liberal section of the country, that is the South and the Middle Belt, they are not united. All along, the Middle Belters were aligned with them in the North there, the conservative North. But now their eyes are open. A lot of, look at Obadiah Melafia is from there, the governor of Benue State himself. So many of them. You see the stance of General T.Y. Danjuma, who is from Taraba. Was he not the one who first warned Nigerians that they should seek ways of defending themselves?
But Prof,
This was a man. And so, if we can do that, we are going to execute a democratic revolution.
Okay, Prof,
we will change. That constitution will be for ours to change. Anything we want to do with it, we will do with it.
So let me ask you this. We will be rounding up now shortly, Prof. But let me ask you this. I mean, I haven't spent this time talking about this. Obviously, we can see what is possible and where there might be challenges in terms of driving this forward. Now, what if the people, maybe let's say the people of the South, if the core North want to maintain the status quo, but what if the people of the whole South come together to say and demand that the current government, APC, implement their own restructuring document that contains referendum that will grant them that referendum before the next election as a prerequisite of participating in that election. Isn't that a fair demand?
I don't know what the referendum in the report of the El-Rufai committee entails, because maybe it's a referendum to adopt the few changes that are in his report. I think that should be it. I don't think it will be a referendum to say, do you want to be part of Nigeria or you don't want to be part of Nigeria? I
Well,
don't think you ever
it
find that.
clearly says in that document, when referendum was mentioned, item 12 in that document says that the component unit shall have the rights, invariably, to make, that the component unit shall have the right to determine how certain, how things should be within their space, as far as certain conditions are met in a referendum. Now, in bracket, it says in these are to accommodate like people like IPOB, where that have been demanding for such for a long time. So again, because I'm thinking, how can we as a people collectively, without, in the words of Patrick Obiagbon, without engaging in physical paraboism, to actually intellectually and maybe find a way to corner the government to a point that they agree to those things? Because if the current government APC have started the implementation of what they promised in terms of restructuring, I don't think the level of decibel of sound that we hear today regarding self-determination, restructuring, breakaway, all this will be here. I think people will probably,
My
because
dear,
once things are beginning to happen, some people will cool temper, some will say, okay, it's not enough, but at least it's something. Then we get them incremental, in form of incremental processes. But here, I think why we have so many people agitating now is because it appears those we have governing us in their left ear, something is definitely wrong with that.
well, I don't see this government bending over backwards to do anything about that report anymore, because we've had answers. Aside the police reforms, the young people that carried it out also spoke about the need to reform the country as a whole, political reforms. Many people didn't pay attention to that. The agitation by IPOB, by Yoruba Nation activists and other parts of the country are sufficient pressures for a listening government to say, let us dialogue. Let's have some sort of national conversation. But these are conservatives who hide under constitutionalism and say, if there is no need for any dialogue because your elected representatives are there in the National Assembly. Of course, we know that the elected representatives that we have today, they are not representing us in any fundamental sense other than doing the bidding of the present government. Anything the present government takes to the National Assembly, the current National Assembly, they simply rubber stamp it. The current loan that the president is requesting for, you can take it to the bank that they will grant it. All those things that they said they are looking into it is just trying to save face. They will grant the entire $4 billion and 710 million euros. And if it takes more to the place, even if it carries $20 billion request, they are going to still grant it. So those things you said are in the report will still have to go to this same National Assembly to be voted on. If they approve it, it goes to the state houses of assembly.
So if they are rubber stampers, as you said, so why do you think they will not rubber
How do we
stamp it
get the
as well?
majority?
No,
Yeah,
but
how do we get the majority?
yeah, but if they are rubber stampers,
To
so why wouldn't
accept?
they rubber stamp it?
Because they don't. No, they will not rubber stamp it, because if the government is not interested in it, they will not rubber stamp the report of El-Rufai. They will vote against it. They will vote against it. So that is why a lot of people do not see any change as possible with the present core of elected senators, House of Rep member, etc. And that is why I'm saying that in order not to let this journey go too far before we get to destination, let us pull this gimmick by actually contesting power with them. In a university system where I belong to, when you want to appoint a vice chancellor all over this country, there is what we call a search team. They believe that a university is a center of excellence, that only the very best should be appointed to govern its affairs. So when they advertise, they don't just leave it to those who feel they meet the qualifications to apply. A search team will actually go around to look for those academics home and abroad who are qualified, who meet all the characteristics and attributes required, who may not ordinarily apply, seasoned academics who are not interested in such things, and then nominate them that they too should apply. They will collect their CV. If we can do that in a university system, who says we cannot do it in the matter of governing our country? We want a new order of things. We look for the right people in our space. We are not going to rely on the existing politicians, those who are agitating. I'm a professor. There are other professors in it. There are lawyers in this movement. There are journalists in this movement. There are elderly people who have had a career, who have had a good life, that they just want to go to their graves by leaving behind a country that is sane, where things work to their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Those people can still volunteer themselves in this transitional period to a better country and contest. We need to search retired principals, retired permanent secretaries, journalists, veteran journalists, lawyers, those who are accomplished, pastors, religious leaders that we know are leaders in their communities, people we can trust that are not interested in politics. We recruit them, we search for them. Daddy, come and be our governor. Mommy, come and be our senator. Uncle, come and be our House of Rep member. We will all come out, we will support you. That is the sort of thing we need. But if we abandon the political space to these charlatans, to these buccaneers, these looters, things will degenerate from bad to worse. Naira is now 575 naira to $1. And this is an import-dependent nation. If we are waiting till we get to do a republic, one way or the other, before we start trying to sanitize the governmental arena, we are waiting for the Dua Republic. These charlatans, if they come into power, are we going to deny them taxes? Those of us who are for the Dua Republic that are in the state civil service, are we not going to pay taxes? Are we not going to pay VAT? And they will continue to loot it and continue to impoverish us. If we say we are not going to vote, can we also decide not to pay taxes? If we can decide not to pay taxes, then we are good to go. But for as long as we pay their rent on our stores, they come and give us some paper where we are selling pepper in the market, we pay and all the rest of it, and we say we are not concerned. We will not participate in the election. We are only cutting our noses to spite our faces. It's not a good strategy. I say that as a strategic study scholar.
Thank you very much, Professor. It has been an engaging 1.5 hours with you. Obviously, I think this conversation must and will continue, as events unfold. what we do here is to explore these things, see what works, what doesn't work, to drive civil conversation that people would listen to, go back, sleep over these concepts, sleep over these things you've said, and begin to think how best to engage this monster of misgovernance. The only reason why we're having this conversation this evening is because that the governance of this nation is broken, that everyone, it's sad, everyone is not happy. Hence, everyone is complaining. And people think maybe as a result of this, we will boycott the election. We're not going to vote so that we teach them a lesson. And some think, well, you can boycott the election. If you do, those who you want to keep away would actually come in and become your landlord. It becomes a quagmire. It becomes, something that no one knows exactly how it's going to play out. But bringing the intellectual perspective to it, given scenario, building scenario as you've laid out this evening, calls for deeper consultation and deeper thinking as to the way of finding a lasting solution. It is my privilege, Professor, once more this evening to say thank you for being part of this conversation. It has been an
Thank
engaging
you.
evening.
Thank
Thank you
you,
very much.
Mazi. And our people rooting for Yoruba Nation, I want to reassure you that I'm with you. Where we may be having issues now is a matter of strategy and tactics. And that is basically what we have been discussing, strategy and tactics. But as to the goal of self-determination, I'm 100% with you.
Thank you very much, Prof. That's a very fine place to leave it. Once more, everyone that have been watching us, thank you once more for being part of this conversation. If you haven't, please subscribe to Njenje Media TV. Follow us on our various social media handle. If you want to follow me personally on Twitter, my Twitter handle is at Mazi Ezoke, Maaziezeoke, at Mazi Ezoke on Twitter, and follow Njenje Media on YouTube, on Facebook, Periscope, and on Twitter. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.